All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Ron Bogart on the show, and Ron is the CEO of Gold Mechanical. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you, Patrick. It is my pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. So a little bit about Ron. Again, he's the CEO of Gold Mechanical. It's a company that he's led since it became employee owned in 2012. He obtained a master's in organizational leadership and a bachelor's in business administration from Evangel University, where he also taught for 9 years in the graduate business studies program. Currently, he's halfway through his Doctor of Strategic Leadership degree. Ron's entrepreneurial journey began at 23, and he's held various roles like CFO, CEO, and board appointments, even reaching Washington, D.C. Ron and his wife, Nancy, co-own Jordan Essentials, a national manufacturing and sales company, ingraining business and management in their family's DNA. He also runs Legion of Longevity, a coaching service promoting sustainable nutrition and active practices for a fulfilling and healthy life. For recreation, Ron's active and adventurous family enjoys outdoor activities, and he's even competed in fitness events, qualifying for nationals in duathlon in 2016, very impressive, and completing a 50-mile race for his 50th birthday. Okay, that's even more impressive. Most I've ever done is a half marathon, and my knees and bones are like, oh, dude, that's it. In 2022, they embraced pickleball, installing a court at home. Ron and Nancy have been happily married for 34 years and have 4 children between 25 and 30. Ron, very impressive resume. Can't wait to dive into your journey. Before we do that, what's one interesting fact about yourself that not many people know?
The prequel to all that is I was raised a hog farmer.
A hog farmer. Wow.
You wouldn't have thought. I mean, we had a lot on our farm. We were, sharecroppers, so we row cropped, had beef, but we had a confinement operation for feeder pigs. And so on Saturday mornings when most kids were watching cartoons, we were doing everything you needed to do to get them ready for market. So,
wow. Did you enjoy that?
I didn't know any better.
Gotcha.
But I can tell you that farm life is hard life, and I think that's what's helped me in business, is because nothing is as hard as that was. And so even when we have rough days around here, I'm thinking, well, at least I'm not working pigs right now, so this isn't that bad.
It's all relative, right?
It really is. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, tell us about Gold Mechanical. Tell us more about what you guys do, and then your journey since coming on board as CEO.
Yeah, so to give you a little background of Gold Mechanical, it started in 1987 by Dwayne Gold, and he was just a hardworking guy. And Dwayne and I ran across each other in the late 80s, early 90s. And I had a business, he had this business. And so we were working in similar markets, but like at different stratospheres. And so we would kind of share work back and forth, and we were just good strategic partners. And we did that for a lot of years. And then in 2000, my wife and I started Jordan Essentials. It took off. I got out of the industry completely. And then I came back into it in 2009, for those that were around during 2008 and how tough it was in the market there. It taught us about diversification. And so my wife and I decided it'd be good for us to be in a couple of different industries. So I ran across Dwayne again, and the company had become fairly sizable. It was up in the low 20 million range, and he was looking at maybe taking an employee owned. And he said he had a good team, but he said, I'm just missing that one component to pull it all together. And again, this was about 2009, 3 years before he took it ESOP. So he asked me if I would help him find the person for that. And I was doing some consulting at the time. And so I'm like, sure. I mean, I'm not going to make it a full-time gig. I'm not a headhunter, but I'll look around. Yeah. And so for 3 years, he and I failed at that miserably. And so he called me, it was Labor Day 2012. And he said, I figured it out. So meet me for breakfast. And so I showed up, and I'm like, who did you find? He says, well, I'm pretty sure it's you. And I said, this sounds an awful lot like punishment for me not executing the original order. And he said, or you could look at it as a great opportunity. And so I came on here in 2012, and it was a great opportunity. Neither one of us had led a business through, sole proprietorship to employee ownership. And there's a lot involved in that. A lot I wished I'd known prior to, but we're smart people. We'll figure it out. And so we did. He retired in 2015, and that's when I took over as president and CEO. And so from that point, the first year we were ESOP, we did about 30 million, and we're north of 45 right now this year so far, with a little bit left. So we've been able to continually grow through that. We bought the business. We were paid for, free and clear, debt free in 2020. And so right now we're just growing and going and setting up another location in another state right now as we speak. So it's just been a very blessed journey for me.
Okay, and so Gold Mechanical, then you are mechanical contractors.
Yep.
I assume so. So HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all of that, or
a little bit of everything. Not so much on the electrical side, although we do a building automation part of our work, but we're strictly commercial.
commercial?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. We do a lot of campuses, hospitals. When COVID happened, we were active on 7 medical projects at that time. And so we got busier through that period where a lot of people were shut down. We didn't have a choice. Our clients needed us there to do what we were doing. And so that sparked some of our growth. I'll tell you one little niche we got into that a lot of people don't realize is aquariums. You know, have you ever taken kids, grandkids, or somebody to an
Sure.
aquarium? You know, all right. Well, they're all over the country, and they're not just selling, admission. There's a lot of research dollars that come to it for testing how this biology lives in certain climates.
Yeah.
Well, we did a major aquarium here in town, and then we've started doing them around the country because we do the life support system piping. With it, you can imagine how much water it takes to circulate in all these different environments through aquariums. And so we started doing that here in town, and right now we've got and we're in the Midwest and Southwest Missouri, but we're currently doing projects in San Diego, California, and Sarasota, Florida. So we've taken that over the last 8 years from just being a local concern to now we're basically nationwide. So that's been a neat little niche for us. Not a lot of competition in that market.
Yeah. So you've really tunneled in on that, and that's kind of like, that you're known for that now.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, very cool. So what would you say sticking to commercial has been a significant strategic advantage for you versus other companies that are doing residential? Is there better margins there, more reliability, recurring revenue?
I've worked on both sides of the market, and I don't think it's as much strategic as it is just a preference. That working in business to business and high level clients is just a lot easier than working with the general public. And if you're familiar with how the general public operate, then you can kind of see where we're going with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things that right now in the construction industry and in the trades, there's a shortage of about 400,000 workers. And so even though there's other markets we could get in, there's no need to get into markets that we're having a hard time hiring for.
Sure.
And in the commercial space, it's a little more elegant and easier to recruit than hiring people to go walk into other people's houses. And so that's one of the things that's helped us. I mean, we increased our workforce 20% last year in a time where very few people are able to get fully employed. And we are fully employed here at Gold Mechanical. I think a lot of it has to do with the employee ownership. We pay out a lot of money every year, and we get to work on really cool projects. So that I think that helps from a competitive standpoint, not just on what we do, but who we hire.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I'm very familiar with this space, and typically what I thought I've experienced is that the commercial space requires a higher level of technical aptitude and skill set. And so that makes it harder to find those good people. But it sounds like you've combined that with your ESOP program, and that's really awesome. I'm sure with many other things, including your culture, that's allowed you to differentiate yourself from your competition.
Yeah, well, and it's almost like farming to a degree, or pollination, if you will. You've got to have good stock on board to train what you're bringing on board, right? And
Yeah.
so we've got 160 employees right now today, and 25% of them are north of 50 years old. And so you could look at that, well, you've got an aging workforce, or you could look at that pool of experience we have that they're able to hand off, rub off on those that we're raising up. And so if you look at nationwide, the average age of a tradesman somewhere around 42, 43 years old. At Gold Mechanical, our average age is really 38. Because yes, we've got this pool of experience, but we're being able to bring in all these young people that are extra bright, willing to work hard, humble, hungry, and smart. And so we can then create new versions of that. And it's been great for us.
Humble, hungry, and smart. I love it. The Patrick Lencioni ideal team player reference there. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good. So what do you think are some of the big things, Ron, that have allowed you to be so successful in your company?
Well, having a good team. I mean, nobody does anything very well in a vacuum. And the way we've been able to harness everybody's individual talents, you've got some companies that will have these 2 or 3 executives that are like these big oak trees that take care of everything. But at the same time, they're shadowing the saplings that are trying to grow up, and they're never able to take root. And so we've never been so prideful around here to think that everything's got to be done by any one of us. And so people aren't well-rounded, but teams can be. And so sometimes it's not just finding the best people, but finding the right person for a particular niche. And I think that's been something that's helped us be maybe more successful than average, be my guess.
Yeah, fantastic. A team is everything, right? Especially when you get to a certain level and you're able to remove yourself from the day-to-day operations. Your leadership team, your management team is very critical. And I know you mentioned also that you had implemented EOS, and that was very pivotal.
Yeah. And that's actually new for us. And that's kind of a shout out to my wife. In our business, she was, like everything else, you hit up in these ceilings, right? And part of the EOS model is the way you break through ceilings is to simplify. And in our business, we weren't very good at that simplification component. And so she's like, hey, I think this would be something really good for the business. And I kind of read through the book and I'm like, it seems complicated to me, other than just being regular 101 business stuff. Okay, so it's strategic planning, it's meetings, and how you analyze people. That there's nothing new here. So I threw the book on the shelf for about 5 years, and then I was around some people in a Vistage group, and a couple of them, they were talking about the EOS stuff, and I'm like, oh, that traction book, yeah. Well, then I really got to talking to them and understanding it. So I tried doing a self-implementation, started about a year ago. And it was going okay, but again, I could kind of see that I needed some outside help. So we hired an implementer to come in here at Gold and get that going. And so we're really technically a year into that. We probably got another year left before it's completely complete. But I took what I've learned through that and I've implemented down at the family business. And both operations have had the best years. And it may not be 100% because of that, but it has a lot to do with it. I mean, especially in my wife's company, our company, November was her biggest month in history. And this is a 23-year-old company. And the fact that happened just 6 months after we started implementing EOS, I think there's enough evidence to convict there that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I speak very highly of any organized business structure, specifically EOS, and anything like that. It takes time.
Scale up. There's a lot of them out there.
Sure.
It's just sticking to something that works for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also, so if you tear into EOS, right, what do you think has been, because many people on the show, we've talked about EOS and it's a very popular operating system. What do you think has been the biggest game changer for you when you dig into that EOS? The biggest thing that's helped turn that needle?
Um, if you could only allow me to keep one instrument of that, one
Yeah.
component,
Yeah.
it would be the people analyzer.
People analyzer. Tell me more.
Well, so for me, and maybe for you and a lot of other high functioning people, when it comes to managing individuals,
Right.
maybe it's easier for some than others. Well, this levels the playing field because it takes a lot of the emotion out of it and makes it a rational discussion. And when you can think rationally and speak rationally with people, that there may be a gap between where they are and where they need to be.
Mm,
And if you can show them on paper that gap and you can help them build a plan to narrow that gap, and then they decide whether they narrow
right.
the gap or not. And if they
Right.
do, great. If they don't, we either find a new place for them or we free up their future. It's not a decision we really have to make because as managers, we get decision fatigue anyway. And if you can make one decision easy or one that kind of makes itself, when you really sit down and help them understand, hey, this is how we measure success here. These are our 5 core values. And you either got it or you don't. You either want to do the job, have the capacity to do the job, and you get the job. And if you don't, then it just makes it super easy. And especially with my wife at that business, she's an extremely empathetic person.
Mm,
And so it's torture for her in
yeah.
some of these management
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is my get out of jail free card because I can sit down and I can have the talk. And they say, well, why don't you think that I'm measuring up to your level of optimism? She's like, I don't know. You're just not.
Hmm.
So, let's put a plan together to make that happen or whatever it is. But yeah, I would say because, and I had somebody ask me, they had a medical practice and they were asking me if I thought EOS would work for them.
Sure.
And because they didn't think it would, they were trying to find a good reason not to do it. And I said, EOS only works in businesses that have people in them. And so that's just it. It's probably going to work for anybody, but it's that people component because honestly, my opinion, every problem is a people problem. I mean, even when you get to supply chains, there's people
Absolutely.
involved. You get the stuff or not, right?
Yeah.
So how you're able to work with people and same thing. We use the people analyzer even for some of the vendors we're bringing on, and we assess them that way. So it's not just something we use internal, but that would be the one thing. I think it's all good. All the components of it are good, but that would be the one that if I had to get rid of everything, if this ship was sinking and I can only run off of it with one thing, it'd be the people analyzer for sure.
Yeah, and I love that component of it, and for that very reason that you talked about. Well, two reasons. One is most places don't have a system, any kind of system to really analyze. So typically it's there's a lot of cognitive bias. Like so there's a lot of people who, if they're like me, I'm gonna like them. I'm gonna promote that person faster, keep them around, all that kind of stuff. And even more so, like in the case of your wife, I think that's a fantastic fit. Somebody who's empathetic, who just the last thing they want to do is hurt somebody's feelings.
Yep.
But now it's a system. Now it's a yes or no. It's a graded thing. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Um, then you talk to me about your adaptive leadership approach. You said that was something that's allowed you to really stand out as well.
Yeah, so this comes a little bit from my academic background, which again, the irony is not lost that as a young pig farmer, the school I went to didn't think I was college material, so I thought it was fun to go ahead and keep going until I get to a terminal degree. And but adaptive leadership was it. There's probably about 10 different models, and this is probably where I want to insert this because we were talking about EOS, Scale Up, some of the other
Yeah.
business tools that are out there. There's a scientist in California that works on. His name's Andy Galpin. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but he's one of these guys in physical fitness. And so what he'll say is the methods are many, the concepts are few.
Mm.
And so finding a good concept and then having a method that works with that, because you could probably find 100 different versions of leadership, but the concepts are really few.
Mm.
Okay. one person said there's really only about 12 good ideas that are on this planet. But if you can utilize all 12 of them, you're going to win, right? So what adaptive leadership is, it's basically the idea of pushing the decision making down to the lowest level. So instead of trying to manage a company, you build a team of problem solvers.
Love it.
That's the primary approach, because they say that if you've got a good team, they can run your operation without you. A great team can grow your operation without you.
Okay,
You can't grow an operation without being a really good problem solver.
Right.
So if I've got a team of really good problem solvers around me, it doesn't matter what my plan is, they're going to win, because whatever we run into, they're going to find a way around.
What a difference. So if we dig into that for just a minute, because I used to consult and coach business owners as well on that level, specifically how to help create that. I'm curious to know, what would you say are the top, maybe one or two or three things that you as a CEO, what are the levers that you pull to help create that culture?
Well, you probably heard it's a consistent model with leaders. Don't come to me with a problem without having two or three solutions.
Love it. There you go. My my commanding officer in the Navy would do that, the same exact thing. We'd come to him. If we had a ship out on the horizon and it was approaching, we can't just call him and tell him. We had to call him and tell him with our number one recommendation and then number two recommendation.
Right. And so that's something that's, again, one of these concepts that are few, but not a lot of people go through the trouble of that, because you know what it takes? It takes time.
It takes a little bit of time and energy.
Right.
It's just fixing the problem for them.
Right. So to take that a step further, whether you're dealing with that situation or something else, taking the time to explain what you're thinking, what your thought process is. Because a lot of times we might help somebody externally process something without actually explaining what we're thinking. And the reason is, and Patrick, you're probably the same way, is there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to decision making. And so when you're trying to help somebody solve something, you're thinking about how it affects this group over here and this group over here. And at some point, your thought process looks like a bunch of spinning plates. And so you've spent 15 minutes trying to connect all these dots with somebody. And who wants to take the 15 minutes to explain exactly how you're thinking about something? But once they know how you think, then they're able to think that way as well. And even better, they're able to teach their team how to think. So it's just showing that there's a level of importance on it, that I'm willing to spend the time with you to not rush through this.
Love that.
Because what this matters, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably the two main levers that we pull around here. And I'm pretty ardent on that. I'll just walk by and I'll listen to people having these discussions. And, I may throw out there, have you thought that completely through? And then that's kind of their clue to, they need to explain their thinking to somebody else, because they're just spoon feeding them the answer instead of teaching them how to process it themselves.
So it wasn't necessarily that you're challenging their answer. You're just asking them, have you thought that completely through?
Right. And sometimes they have, and that's great. And they're going to make mistakes. And I guess that's the other thing is to know, we have a saying around here, so far our survival rate is 100%, which means you're going to do some stuff wrong. When you get your own planet, you can set it up however you want and it can be perfect. But the way this one spins, people are going to screw up. And we learn through our losses. Winning is fun, but losing is part of the winning process. That's how you become champions. And so I don't mind when these guys and gals go out and make some mistakes, because typically they're better for it on the other side of it. I've made them, you've made them. What is it they say? Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
I love that saying. I've not used that one before or heard it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
And then we try to make it a safe place for that. So when something does go wrong, one of our sayings is, how fast can we make it funny? Because a lot of times people take things too serious, and you can learn a lot more when you're having fun. And sometimes me and my chiefs of staff, we may take it a little too far. You know, you wouldn't think that you would grow up to a role where you're running an organization and realize half your time is spent in comic relief. But if you can do that a little bit, I think it really goes a long way.
Sure, absolutely. Kind of brings down some of the air, it takes out some of the stuffiness, and if the leaders are doing it, then I'm sure that gets promulgated throughout the organization.
It's very humanizing, yes.
Very humanizing, yeah. Very cool. So Ron, if you were going to hire a CEO to take the reins for your company, what's the one book that you would require they read before taking over for you?
Okay, well, I'm going to butcher your question because I'm going to answer it, but I'll tell you, I would never hire somebody to take my spot that's only read one book, right?
Fair enough.
Since we're so new to operating EOS, I think Traction's one that they would need to read. You've heard that I'm a Lincoln fan, so the 5 dysfunctions of a team and the ideal team player, those are required reading here at Gold, and Good to Great. Those are the 3 books that if you're on my management team, you will have read those. We'll go through them, we'll reference it, because I think sometimes less is more. It's like, hey, let's take the contents of these 3 books and let's really apply the heck out of them. And if we ever run into a situation that one of these 3 can't handle, or one of these 4 can't handle, then we'll go look for something else. But until then, these are our playbooks.
Well, these are very core books. I mean, Jim Collins, Good to Great, the visionary, the core values, the purpose. And then you have Patrick, maybe I've been saying his name wrong this whole time, but I thought it was Lencioni, where the people aspect of really digging into that intrinsic motivation. And then over here on the operating system, I mean, these are timeless, the best books in the industry. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me take a few minutes, Ron, and just kind of summarize some of my key takeaways.
Okay.
Your key, I mean, when I asked you what was your biggest key to success, it's the team. It's the people that I surround myself with. And then when we kind of dig into that a little bit further, talking about the operating system, implementing this EOS, and within EOS, the one aspect of that, and EOS, for those out there, it's entrepreneurial operating system. And the one aspect of it was the people analyzer. That's the part of it that if I had to keep, only one thing to keep and everything else, but it's so much more than that. But in your case, it gives you a system to be able to analyze the performers versus the non-performers, and then a system to take action, and they make a decision whether or not they're on board. You don't have to make that decision for them. They'll either step up or they won't.
Exactly.
The decisions are easy.
Yeah.
And the adaptive leadership approach, I've actually not heard it called that. I've heard of different things, but the concept around that, I think, is phenomenal. Is number one, pushing leadership decisions or decision making to the lowest level possible, right? That's how people help what they help create. And if they're making decisions, then there's so much more ownership. But more importantly, you're building a team of problem solvers, right? You're building clock builders versus clock tellers, right?
Yep.
And if they come to, and what are the levers that as a CEO, it's one thing to say that's what I want to have, but it's another thing to steer the ship to get the culture to that. And some of the levers that you've been able to pull is, you don't come with me with just a problem. You come to me with a problem and a couple solutions. And then you as a CEO, you explain your rationale, you explain your thinking so that your thought process behind that decision, they can embody that, ingrain it, and utilize it going forward.
Right.
And then, creating that culture where mistakes are okay. It's okay. And what did you say? As far as I know, nobody's died yet, or
our survival rate's 100%.
Survival rate's 100%. Yeah. And then the statement that I clung on to, I think, is phenomenal. Is good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
Bad judgment.
So I'm gonna steal that from you and use it. So, yeah. Hey, Ron, if there was one takeaway that you'd really want the audience to absorb from today, what would that be?
What we do in business is what we do. It's not who we are. And, I think the older I get, the more I understand that people are important and people matter. And I think we can get caught up in the day-to-day and miss that. And so the best things that we're going to accomplish, either experiences outside of work and in the marketplace, another person's probably going to be involved in that. And just give some attention to that and honor that and embrace it, I guess.
Yeah, got it. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Ron, if any of our listeners want to reach out, get a hold of you for any questions, possibly for a partnership or questions on leadership or anything you talked about today, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, I've got legionoflongevity.com is my blog site, and it's really the best front door for people to contact me personally. And then, if anybody wants to collaborate on anything business wise or health wise, legionoflongevity.com will get them there. Yep.
Fantastic. Awesome, Ron. Thanks for being on the show. This was very enlightening. I loved our conversation. So many great concepts for other leaders to hold on to.
Well, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate the questions. I'm going to borrow some of those in the future too.
Very good. Awesome. Thanks again for being here. And for the listeners, please hit the like and subscribe button and help us spread the word about what we're doing. We're helping the next generation of leaders and CEOs be that much more successful. With that, this is your host, Patrick Rogers, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks a lot.